Welcome back, everyone. Well, as you probably know, our continuing series interviewing experts in different fields, we're working with Ellis Medicine, and you might recall we did an interview recently about Lyme disease. Well, with the football season coming on and a lot of contact sports in high school, we asked them if we could bring an expert on to talk about concussions. This is a very interesting subject. So joining me today is Dr. Audrey Paslow. Welcome, Audrey.
Thank you.
Dr. Audrey Paslow.
Thank you.
Who's an expert in the field of recognizing the symptoms of concussions, what to do about it, and how to help these people get back on a healthy road.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. Let's just start with, now you're in physical therapy, so you see a lot of this.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Before we went on air, Audrey said that the most important thing is understand baseline testing.
Right.
So could you explain to us, our viewers, what you mean by that?
There's three components to baseline testing. So what we're talking about is capturing somebody's mental and physical well-being, what their picture looks like, prior to them starting a sports season. So we would want a high school athlete, especially ones that are involved in contact sports, soccer, football, lacrosse, rugby, any of those, to come in, and what they would do is do an injury background, just to give an idea of what their medical history looks like. One of the biggest things we look for is if they've had a history of concussions. That's one predictor that we think makes people more vulnerable to getting another head injury, as well as looking at baseline neurocognitive testing and balance testing. So those are two huge pieces. Some school districts offer the neurocognitive testing. They use what's called typically IMPACT. So it's a computer-based program. The students log on, and especially for like high schools, especially, they'll have computer labs set up. So they'll sit down and do the computer-based testing, and it looks at their processing, reaction time, memory, things of that nature. The other piece that I think really should be included, and that's encouraged by the CDC, the NCAA, and even the American Medical Association, is doing balanced baseline testing. So that piece, you have the athlete come in, they're going to stand in certain positions on even and uneven surfaces. You're trying to mimic what they would do on the field, where maybe they're running on grass or something like that, and you're looking to see what their response is. That gives you a stronger framework to work from if somebody does have an injury, so that you know for them personally what we're trying to get them back to prior to them going back to the field. It tries to take the guesswork out of what otherwise is a very tricky injury to diagnose, and then determine when somebody's safe and ready to return to play.
Right, you don't know, and again, just so we understand what baseline means here, this is having really statistics available to you for every player, so that you have something to refer to. So if you see anything out of the ordinary with this person, you have something to go to as a reference point, correct?
Right, something that's individualized to that person, because every individual is different, especially if they've had prior head injuries or even something like a learning disability. That'll affect how quickly they can recover. So it's nice to know that piece, so you're knowing what's normal for that person. Yes,
right. Now, we were explaining before we went on air also, overt signs that you've had a concussion, fairly easy to recognize, but let's hit those first, and then let's hit the not so subtle ones, the ones that you may not recognize immediately, but could have a devastating effect down the road. So let's back up. The overt signs.
The overt signs, those are probably the pieces that would pop up immediately. So if you're thinking from like a coach or an athletic trainer or a parent standing on the sideline, you're watching individuals play, one of the athletes gets hit. Probably the first thing you're going to watch is them stumble a little bit. Usually they tend to move a little clumsy. Let's say it was an athlete playing in a football game. They might not remember the period of game that they're in, what the score is.
So forgetfulness.
Right, absolutely.
Right, okay.
That might be some of the first couple of things that you notice with them.
And and I think you were saying also nauseous.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
And I remember that from personal experiences, that you couldn't figure out why you were, you felt that way. And of course, those are the more overt signs, and you might just pull that player off the field and do a little bit of a diagnose on them. Not so overt, the subtle ones.
The subtle ones, those are the pieces that you would have to dig a little deeper, or things that might take a little more time to appear, and that's what makes concussion so tricky. Every head injury that happens is serious, and everyone should be taken seriously. So the signs that pop up initially, some people say, oh, they just got their bell rung or they got dinged, they're okay, and put them back on the field, but sometimes it can take several hours to a couple days for some of the symptoms to totally pop up. So some of those more subtle symptoms would be feeling dizzy, if the person complains of having double double vision. They might be sensitive to light or sound.
Right.
Might complain of a headache. The number one sign that individuals usually complain of with a concussion is a headache.
Right. Now, even just digging a little bit deeper, it's rare, but there could be, you could sustain a head injury, not really know immediately that it's a concussion, whatever, but there might be internal bleeding.
Right, and that's a more severe type of head injury.
Right.
The other things that you have to be careful of, if somebody hasn't completely healed and they're going back to the field, they can also develop what's called second impact syndrome.
Right,
And there's
yes.
swelling that occurs in the brain, and unfortunately, those cases are rare, but they can be fatal. And the biggest thing is we want to try and prevent those. And the prevention really is pulling that person if they've had their first injury and not allowing them to continue to do whatever it is that they're doing, a game or what have you.
Well, you know, the tendency there is the girl or boy, what says to the coach, I'm good, I can go back in, You know, it's the nature of sports and the competitiveness.
Right.
And it's up to that individual at that point to recognize, no, you sustained an injury. I think you're going to sit this one out, right?
Right, absolutely. And
Not always easy to do in the heat of battle.
No,
Right.
especially not on the field where everybody wants to play and
Right.
still be a part of the game and be there for their team. You know, they don't want to leave their team. But that's a responsibility of parents, coaches, even the athletic trainers that are there. If they see signs and symptoms, to take any head injury that they see seriously and pull that person and to have an action plan in place.
Now, I know, because I've been there, Ellis Medicine has a facility in Clifton Park, right?
Correct.
Now, this is where you're based out of there?
Right. The physical therapy program and the concussion management program in terms of rehabilitation is based on 939 Route 146. So it's about a mile and a half away from Shenendehowa High School.
Right, gotcha. So if anyone out there sustains an injury, you're questioning it, even if it's just a question about it, you're not sure, better check in, right?
Right. I mean, now especially with New York State, they have laws passed to guide school districts in particular that they have to take concussions seriously and they have to be cleared by a doctor before they can return to play. So the important piece is if you notice a head injury, if a parent, athletic trainer, coach sees it, pull that person from play, have them evaluated either at urgent care, emergency rooms, or even their primary care physician, depending on the
Right.
severity of injury. And then if they're still having trouble with recovery, considering a program like rehab. Physical
Right.
therapy to do rehabilitation to get them back to sport because they have to be cleared by that physician before they can return back to play. But having that action plan in place, knowing if you see somebody, you suspect the injury, pull them from play, have them evaluated, and make sure that's communicated between the coach and the team. That's the most
Right.
important thing that you can do.
Boy, very thorough. Let's just want to recap a bit of this. If your son or daughter is participating in sports, get a baseline evaluation. So if there is an injury, they have something to work from.
Right.
And then watch out for the signs. Some are overt, some are much more subtle. But if you see dizziness, nauseous, headache, stumbling, forgetfulness, have it checked.
Have it checked.
Okay. Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
And we'll have you back again because in the fall, let's face it, between soccer and rugby and football, there's a lot of contact sports going on out there.
There is, and I mean, any kind of play, any kind of game, or even recreational activity, playground equipment, anything can
Yes,
happen,
right, sure.
unfortunately. So knowing that risk is out there, being aware of it, and knowing what to do if something happens, those are the important pieces.
Boy, thank you. It's very helpful. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
To see this interview again, please head to our website, looktvonline.com.